My son called me a burden. So I sold the house they thought was theirs. My name is Velma Crawford, 63 years old and still capable of making decisions for myself despite what my son thinks. I never imagined I'd be sitting in a beachfront cafe 3,000 miles away from what used to be my home, sipping a Mai Tai while watching the sunset. Just 4 months ago, I overheard my son on the phone call me a burden. Well, that burden just sold the $980,000 family home out from under them. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family drama is your thing. I met Harold Crawford when I was just 20 years old. He was 23 with a mischievous smile and dreams bigger than the Connecticut sky. We married after a whirlwind romance that scandalized my parents but felt absolutely right to us. For 40 beautiful, challenging, wonderful years, we built a life together. Harold worked his way up at an insurance company while I taught third grade at the local elementary school. We saved every penny we could, dreaming of the perfect family home. When William was born, our tiny apartment felt even smaller, but we made it work. By the time he was 10, we had finally saved enough for a down payment on a beautiful colonial home in a leafy suburb of Hartford. I still remember the first time we drove up to that house. 3 stories of classic New England charm with black shutters against crisp white siding, a wraparound porch, and a magnificent oak tree in the front yard. Inside were 4 bedrooms, hardwood floors throughout, and a kitchen with big windows overlooking a backyard that seemed enormous to us after apartment living. The moment we walked in, Harold squeezed my hand and whispered, "This is it, Velma. This is our forever home." For 30 years, we filled that house with memories. Birthday parties in the backyard, Christmas mornings by the fireplace, homework at the kitchen table. We watched William grow from a little boy building forts in the living room to a teenager stomping up the stairs after arguments to a young man packing for college. Every corner of that house held a piece of our history. Harold and I had planned to grow old together there. We talked about converting the downstairs den into a bedroom if stairs became difficult. We discussed which grandchildren would stay in which rooms when they visited. The future stretched before us, predictable and comforting. Then, 2 years ago, Harold had a massive heart attack while working in the garden. One minute he was planting tomatoes, the next, he was gone. Just like that, 40 years of partnership vanished, leaving me alone in our forever home. The first months after Harold died remain a blur in my memory. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching his things, sleeping on his side of the bed to catch the lingering scent of his aftershave on the pillow. William visited often, bringing casseroles and concern. His wife Tara organized Harold's clothes for donation when I couldn't bear to do it myself. They were my support system, the only thing keeping me tethered to the world. About 3 months after the funeral, William suggested they move in with me. "Just temporarily, Mom," he said, "until you're back on your feet." Tara nodded enthusiastically beside him. "We're worried about you all alone in this big house." I should have recognized the warning signs then. William was 38 with a successful career in finance. Tara worked in real estate. They owned a lovely townhouse closer to the city. There was no logical reason for them to squeeze into my house with its outdated decor and creaking floors. But grief had clouded my judgment, and the thought of having family close by was too tempting to refuse. They moved into the guest bedroom upstairs, bringing much more luggage than seemed necessary for a temporary stay. Within weeks, William was offering to help with my finances. Dad always handled the investments. He reminded me as though I might have forgotten. "Let me take that burden off your shoulders." I handed over passwords to accounts and explained Harold's meticulous filing system. William nodded, making notes and occasionally exchanging glances with Tara that I pretended not to notice. Looking back, I can see how they were already making plans, already seeing the house as their inheritance, rather than my home. The shifts in our relationship were subtle at first. William began making decisions without consulting me. When the water heater needed replacing, he chose the model and scheduled the installation. When property tax bills arrived, he paid them from my account without discussion. "Just handling it, Mom," became his refrain whenever I questioned these actions. Tara's transformation was even more striking. Initially, she had been solicitous, asking my permission before using the kitchen, deferring to my routines. 6 months in, she was rearranging my cabinets to make them more efficient and scheduling dinner parties without checking if I had plans. My presence in these gatherings shifted from honored mother to tolerated elder, expected to retire early and leave the younger crowd to their fun. They began redecorating room by room. First, it was freshening up the guest room with new paint and bedding. Then, the living room furniture was replaced because it was outdated. My beloved floral sofa, where Harold and I had spent countless evenings watching TV, disappeared one day while I was visiting my doctor. In its place stood a sleek sectional in a gray fabric that showed every crumb and pet hair. "We thought you'd like something more modern, Mom," William explained when I stared at the new furniture in shock. "The old sofa was pretty worn out." I didn't argue. What would be the point? They were being helpful, after all, but each change erased another piece of the home Harold and I had created, replacing our history with their vision of the future. Occasionally, I'd overhear snippets of conversation that made my stomach clench. William murmuring to Tara about when the house is ours, or Tara speculating about converting my sewing room into a home gym once they had the place to themselves. I told myself I was misinterpreting that they couldn't possibly be planning to push me out of my own home. But as the months passed and their possessions spread throughout the house like an invasive species, crowding out my belongings and memories, the truth became harder to deny. My son and his wife weren't there to help me through my grief. They were waiting for me to fade away, clearing the path for them to claim what they already saw as their rightful inheritance. Still, I said nothing. Conflict had never been my strong suit, and with Harold gone, I feared being truly alone more than I resented being marginalized. So I retreated to my bedroom, the last space that remained fully mine, and tried to convince myself that this arrangement was for the best. After all, what 63-year-old woman really needs a 4-bedroom house to herself? The tension in our household had been building for weeks, but I continued ignoring the warning signs. In April, William and Tara began discussing a European vacation, their voices animated as they pored over travel websites at the kitchen table. 3 weeks is the minimum we need, Tara insisted, scrolling through Airbnb listings on her laptop. If we're crossing the ocean, we might as well do it right. William nodded in agreement. We can do London, Paris, Rome, and finish in Barcelona. It's the trip we've been dreaming about. I stood in the doorway, a cup of tea cooling in my hands, listening to their plans. Not once did they glance my way or ask what I thought about them leaving for nearly a month. It was as if I had become invisible in my own home. A week later, they announced at dinner that they'd booked the trip for May. "We got amazing deals on flights," Tara gushed, showing me pictures of the charming apartments they'd reserved in each city. William reached for the salt without looking at me. "You'll be okay watching the house while we're gone, right, Mom, and taking care of Duchess and Prince." Duchess and Prince were their pets, a temperamental Persian cat and a high-strung Pomeranian that had never quite warmed to me. I had not been consulted about bringing these animals into my home either, but they had arrived with fancy beds and specialized food shortly after William and Tara moved in. "You want me to watch your pets for 3 weeks?" I asked my spoon, pausing halfway to my mouth. Tara looked up from her phone, her expression suggesting I was being deliberately obtuse. "Well, of course. We can't take them to Europe, and kennels are so traumatic for animals. Plus," William added, "you'll be here anyway. It's not like you have plans." That last comment stung more than it should have. It was true, I didn't have travel plans or a busy social calendar. After decades of arranging my life around school schedules, and Harold's work retirement had left me somewhat adrift. Widowhood had further contracted my world, but hearing my son so casually dismiss my life as empty made something twist painfully in my chest. Still, I agreed. What else could I do? They had already purchased non-refundable tickets. The plans were made. My feelings, as usual lately, were an afterthought. In the days leading up to their departure, I found myself growing increasingly resentful. I watched as they packed expensive new luggage with new clothes bought specifically for the trip. Money didn't seem to be an object for them, though I knew William's salary was good but not extravagant. I wondered, not for the first time, how much of their lifestyle was being subsidized by my late husband's life insurance and the free housing I was providing. The day before they were scheduled to leave, a pipe under the kitchen sink began leaking. Water pooled on the tile floor, seeping into the lower cabinets where I stored rarely used baking dishes. "William," I called out, "can you help me with this leak before you go?" "I don't think it can wait 3 weeks." He appeared in the doorway, already dressed in the crisp travel outfit he'd laid out for their early morning departure. His expression shifted from excitement to barely concealed irritation. "Mom, we have a million things to do before tomorrow. Can't you call a plumber?" "I don't know which plumber to call," I admitted. "Your father always handled those things and then you took over. I don't even know where the checkbook is anymore." This was true, and the realization made me feel both helpless and angry. How had I allowed myself to become so dependent? William sighed dramatically, pulling out his phone. "Fine. I'll call someone and put it on my card. You can pay me back later." From the living room, I heard Tara's voice low, but not quite whispered. "Is she seriously doing this now?" "We have the taxi coming at 5 tomorrow morning." "I know," William replied, moving away from me. "Just one more day and we'll have a break." A break. From me, in my own home. I grabbed a roll of paper towels and knelt on the floor, sopping up water while fighting back tears. When had I become a burden to be endured? When had my son started seeing me as an obligation rather than a person worthy of basic respect? A few minutes later, William returned. "Plumber can come tomorrow after we leave." I gave them the code to the garage door. "You'll have to deal with it." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without my voice breaking. He turned and walked back to Tara without offering to help clean up or checking if I was okay kneeling on the hard floor with my arthritic knees. That night, I lay awake in bed listening to them moving around the house, their excitement for the trip palpable, even through closed doors. I thought about Harold and how differently he would have handled today's situation. He would have been under that sink himself, wrench in hand, refusing to leave a problem for me to deal with alone. I wondered what he would think of how our son was treating me now. Harold had been so proud of William, so certain we had raised a compassionate, responsible man. Would he recognize the entitled adult who had moved into our home and gradually pushed me to its margins? Sleep eluded me as I stared at the ceiling, contemplating how much had changed, not just since Harold died, but since William and Tara had arrived with their promises of support and companionship. Somewhere along the way, their presence had transformed from comfort to control, their help becoming a slow, systematic erasure of my autonomy. By dawn, my eyes were gritty with exhaustion, but my mind was still spinning with uncomfortable realizations. Something had to change, but I wasn't sure what or how. All I knew was that I couldn't continue living as a guest in what was supposed to be my own home. The morning of their departure arrived with a flurry of activity. Tara bustled around the kitchen at 4:30 brewing coffee and checking their travel documents for the 5th time. William loaded luggage into the taxi that arrived precisely at 5 as scheduled. "There's a list on the refrigerator," Tara told me, gesturing with her travel mug. "Feeding instructions for Duchess and Prince, what days to water the plants, when to put the garbage out. Oh, and the security company might call if the alarm goes off, so keep your phone on." I nodded sleepily, having dragged myself out of bed to see them off despite my restless night. "Have a wonderful trip," I said, trying to infuse my voice with enthusiasm I didn't feel. William gave me a quick, perfunctory hug. "Thanks, Mom. The plumber should be here around noon. Just sign the invoice, he'll send me the bill." And then they were gone, the taxi pulling away into the pre-dawn darkness, leaving me standing in the doorway of the home that increasingly felt less like mine. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table looking at the extensive list Tara had left. 2 pages single-spaced, detailing every aspect of house and pet care. The tone was instructional, as though written for a hired caretaker rather than the homeowner. I noticed she'd even included reminders about basic household tasks I'd been managing since before she was born. Water the plants on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Garbage goes out Thursday night. Recycling is every other Tuesday. Duchess needs her medication hidden in wet food. The list went on, managing to be both condescending and controlling. I set it aside suddenly, too tired to care. Around 9 that morning, my phone rang. It was William. "Mom, just checking in. We're at the airport waiting to board. Did you remember to lock the front door after we left?" "Yes, William, I locked the door," I replied, working to keep the irritation out of my voice. "Great. And you have the plumber coming at noon, right? Don't forget to let him in." "I won't forget." I had managed a household and raised a child while working full-time. Somehow, I thought I could handle a plumber. "Perfect. Oh, and can you check if I left my blue charger in the bedroom? I think it might be under the nightstand. I agreed and walked upstairs to their room, phone pressed to my ear. As I knelt to look under the nightstand, I heard William's voice become muffled. He had apparently covered the phone to speak to Tara. I found the charger and was about to tell William when I realized he hadn't hung up the call properly. Instead of speaking directly to me, I could hear him talking to Tara, their voices slightly distant but perfectly audible. "No, I'm just making sure she remembers everything," William was saying. "You know how she gets confused lately." Tara's voice came through clearly, her tone exasperated. "Honestly, I don't know how we're going to manage when we get back. Your mom's becoming such a burden. When we get back, we need to talk about assisted living options." My breath caught in my throat. A burden, assisted living. I froze in place, the charger clutched in my suddenly trembling hand. "I know," William replied, his voice tired but resolute. "We can't keep living like this. At least the house will be ours soon. We've earned it after dealing with her. Earned it, my house. The home Harold and I had saved for years to buy, where we had raised our son and built our life together." "She's getting more dependent," Tara continued. "Yesterday with the plumber was the last straw for me. We can't leave her alone much longer without worrying what will go wrong next." "The real estate market is hot right now," William mused, as if they were discussing a business opportunity rather than my home and future. "Once we move her out, we could probably sell for close to $1 million if we update the kitchen first." "First class is boarding," Tara said suddenly. "Hang up and let's go." There was a shuffling sound, then William's voice returned to normal volume. "Mom, you still there? Did you find the charger?" I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Yes, I found it. It's right here under the nightstand." "Great. Well, we're boarding now. We'll call when we get to London. Remember to follow Tara's list." "Have a safe flight," I managed to say before the call ended. I sat down heavily on their bed, the phone slipping from my numb fingers. The tears came then, hot and silent, rolling down my cheeks as the full impact of what I'd heard sank in. My son thought I was a burden, an obstacle to be managed and eventually removed. The woman I had welcomed into my home spoke about me with contempt. And together they were planning to take my house, the last concrete connection I had to Harold and our life together. I'm not sure how long I sat there, but eventually the tears stopped. In their place came a hollow feeling, an emptiness that echoed through my chest like a physical pain. I thought about Harold, about the day we bought this house, about his pride in creating a legacy for our family. I thought about William as a little boy, the way he would climb into our bed on Sunday mornings, his small body wiggling between us as we pretended to still be asleep. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike in our driveway, bandaging scraped knees, attending parent-teacher conferences, helping with college applications. Had I failed as a mother? Had I somehow raised a son who could dismiss me so easily, who could speak of me as a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved? The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, not just because they wanted my house, but because they had decided I was incompetent, incapable of making my own decisions. They had appointed themselves the managers of my future without my knowledge or consent. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The grief and shock began to transform into something else, something with sharper edges. I stood up from their bed, wiping the last tears from my face, and walked downstairs with a new sense of purpose. If they thought I was a helpless old woman who needed their guidance, they were about to discover how wrong they were. Velma Crawford was nobody's burden, and this house, my house, was not their inheritance to claim. The first few days after William and Tara left, I moved through the house like a sleepwalker. I fed their demanding pets, watered the plants, and went through the motions of daily life while my mind kept replaying their conversation. "Your mom's becoming such a burden. At least the house will be ours soon. We've earned it after dealing with her." Each remembered phrase was a fresh wound reopening just as the previous one began to scab over. I cried often, sometimes catching myself staring blankly at walls lost in painful memories. On the fourth day, the doorbell rang around noon. It was the mail carrier with a certified letter requiring my signature. I signed for it mechanically, not really registering what it might be until I was back inside with the envelope in my hands. It was from our family attorney, Martin Goldstein. Harold had always handled our legal matters, so I rarely had direct contact with Martin. I opened the letter with a sense of dread, wondering what new complication had arisen. Inside was a brief note explaining that Martin was retiring and transferring his files to a new firm. Included was a list of documents they had on file for me with instructions for how to access them if needed. Most were familiar standard legal papers that Harold had mentioned over the years, but one item caught my attention: Last Will and Testament of Harold Crawford, updated March 15th, 2020. That was just 3 months before his death. I hadn't realized he'd updated his will so recently. Suddenly curious, I went to Harold's office, a small room off the living room that I had barely entered since his death. William had taken over the space for managing household affairs, filling the filing cabinet with his own paperwork and replacing Harold's comfortable old chair with an ergonomic monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. I began opening drawers, searching for the document files that Harold had always kept meticulously organized. Most had been moved or rearranged, but in the bottom drawer I found a familiar accordion folder labeled Important Documents. Inside were our birth certificates, marriage license, property deed, insurance policies, and there at the back a sealed envelope marked Will. With trembling hands I opened it and began to read. The legal language was dense and formal, but the key points were clear. Harold had left everything to me with William as the secondary beneficiary only after my death. The house was fully in my name with no conditions or restrictions on what I could do with it. There was no trust, no clause about William taking over financial decisions, nothing that would give my son any legal right to make choices about my future. I sat back in the chair, a strange mix of emotions swirling through me. Relief that Harold had protected my interests. Anger that William had apparently been counting on inheriting the house while I was still alive. Confusion about how I had allowed myself to be so thoroughly sidelined in my own life. The next morning, I was feeding Prince and Duchess their breakfast when a moment of clarity struck. As I carefully hid the cat's medication in the expensive wet food she preferred, watching her sniff suspiciously at the bowl, I suddenly saw the absurdity of my situation. Here I was catering to the whims of pets that weren't even mine in a house where I had become a secondary consideration. It was time to talk to someone I trusted, someone who would understand both the legal and emotional dimensions of my predicament. I picked up my phone and called Marjorie Levinson. Marjorie and I had taught together for 20 years before her midlife career changed to law school. Now retired from her second career as a family attorney, she had remained one of my closest friends, though our contact had become less frequent after Harold's death. "Velma, is that you?" Her voice was warm and surprised. "It's been ages. How are you holding up?" I hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. "Not well, Marjorie. I need your advice. Can we meet somewhere private, not at my house?" Something in my tone must have alerted her because she immediately suggested lunch at her condo across town. "Come at noon. I'll order in and we can talk without interruptions." Marjorie's condo was a reflection of her personality, elegant, no nonsense, and meticulously organized. She ushered me in with a hug, her sharp eyes taking in my appearance with concern. "You've lost weight," she observed, leading me to her dining room where lunch was already laid out. "And you look exhausted. What's going on?" Over sandwiches and iced tea, I told her everything. William and Tara moving in, the gradual takeover of my home and finances, the overheard conversation, and my discovery of Harold's will. Marjorie listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly outraged. When I finished, she set down her glass with a decisive click. "Those ungrateful, manipulative—" She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. "Forgive me, Velma, but I'm furious on your behalf." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I feel so betrayed, but they're still my family. My only family, really." Marjorie's eyes softened. "Family doesn't treat you like an inconvenience, Velma. Family doesn't plan to push you out of your own home." She stood and walked to her office alcove, returning with a legal pad. "Let's talk about your options. First, legally, you're on solid ground. The house is yours to do with as you wish. William has no claim on it unless you choose to give it to him." She began writing as she spoke. "You could confront them when they return, set firm boundaries, maybe insist they move back to their own place. You could stay and reclaim your home on your terms." I nodded, though the thought of that confrontation made my stomach churn. "Alternatively," she continued, "you could sell the house and move somewhere new, start fresh. Use the money to secure your own future, not theirs. The idea struck me like a thunderbolt. Sell the house, I had never considered it. The home had been so central to my identity for so long that imagining life elsewhere seemed impossible. But as Marjorie outlined what that might look like, explaining current market values and how I might reinvest the proceeds, a new feeling began to emerge. Not excitement exactly, but possibility, freedom. I have a third option for you to consider, Marjorie said, watching my face carefully. When was the last time you spoke to your sister Eleanor? Eleanor, my younger sister who had moved to California decades ago after a disagreement with Harold. We had maintained sporadic contact over the years, holiday cards and occasional phone calls, but had drifted apart as our lives took different directions. It's been a while, I admitted. Maybe a year since we last talked. Marjorie nodded. Call her, reconnect. See if she might be open to a visit. Sometimes a complete change of scenery is exactly what we need to gain perspective. That evening, I did exactly that. Eleanor answered on the third ring, her voice instantly familiar despite the years and distance. Velma, is everything okay? The concern in her voice made me realize how unusual this call must seem to her. Not really, I said honestly. I've had some difficulties with William and I'm thinking about making some changes. To my surprise, Eleanor didn't seem shocked. That boy always did have an entitled streak. She said, the old friction with Harold momentarily surfacing in her tone. What's he done now? I gave her the condensed version, my voice breaking only once when I mentioned the burden comment. Eleanor's response was immediate and forceful. Come stay with me. I have plenty of room in my condo, and Pacific Grove is beautiful this time of year. The ocean air will do you good. I couldn't impose, I protested weakly, even as something inside me leapt at the invitation. It's not an imposition, it's a sister's prerogative, Eleanor insisted. Besides, we have 20 years of catching up to do. By the time I hung up, a plan was forming in my mind. Not just a visit to Eleanor, but something more definitive. A reclaiming of my life and my power. The next morning I called Marjorie again. I need a good realtor, I said without preamble. Someone discreet, efficient, and not connected to William or Tara's social circles. Marjorie chuckled. Velma Crawford, I do believe you're about to teach your son a valuable lesson about underestimating his mother. Yes, I agreed, feeling more certain by the minute. I believe I am. With Marjorie's recommendation, I met with Diana Chen, a realtor known for her quick, confidential transactions. She arrived at my home the day after our phone conversation, notebook in hand and professional smile in place. Mrs. Crawford, it's a pleasure to meet you, she said as I welcomed her inside. Marjorie speaks very highly of you. I led Diana through the house, watching as she made notes and occasionally took photos with her phone. She was thorough and direct, asking questions about recent updates, the age of major systems like the roof and furnace, and any issues I was aware of. This is a beautiful property, she said as we concluded the tour in the kitchen. The colonial style never goes out of fashion, and your location is premium. If you're serious about selling quickly, I think we could list at $950,000 and expect multiple offers. The figure made me blink. Harold and I had paid $180,000 for the house 30 years ago. The thought that our family home was now worth nearly $1 million seemed surreal. How quickly could it sell? I asked, thinking of William and Tara's 3-week trip. Diana tapped her pen against her notebook. In this market, with the right pricing and marketing, we could have offers within days. From listing to closing, perhaps 3 to 4 weeks if the buyers can move quickly. Perfect. I took a deep breath and nodded decisively. Let's do it. But I need to be clear about something, Miss Chen. My son and daughter-in-law don't know I'm selling. They're currently traveling in Europe and won't return for about 2.5 weeks. I'd prefer they not find out until after they're back. If Diana was surprised by this stipulation, she hid it well. I understand, Mrs. Crawford. We can list with limited showings by appointment only, no lockbox and no sign in the yard. You'll need to be present for all showings, but that gives you control over when they occur. 2 days later, professional photos had been taken, a listing created, and my house officially went on the market at $950,000. Diana had been right about the interest. By the end of the first day, we had 6 showing requests. I scheduled them strategically, allowing myself time to tidy up between groups and make the house look as if nothing unusual was happening. By the end of the weekend, we had 3 offers. One was from a young family offering $980,000 all cash, with a request for an expedited closing. The Millers have just relocated here for work, Diana explained as we reviewed the offer. They're living in a corporate apartment and eager to get settled before their children start school. They can close in 2 weeks if the inspection goes well. It felt right somehow, the idea of a young family taking over the home where I had raised my own child. I signed the acceptance papers that afternoon. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity, all conducted with one eye on the calendar. Home inspection appraisal, final negotiations over minor repairs. Each step brought me closer to freedom and further from the life William and Tara had planned for me. In between dealing with the sale, I began making my own preparations. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, one William had no connection to. I arranged for a moving company to come the day before William and Tara were due to return, instructing them to pack only my personal belongings and family heirlooms. I spent evenings sorting through decades of accumulated possessions, deciding what to keep, what to sell, what to donate. It was emotionally exhausting work, each item laden with memories. Harold's reading glasses still on his nightstand. William's kindergarten art projects I'd saved in the attic. The china we'd received as wedding gifts. Some choices were painful, others surprisingly easy. I found myself becoming more ruthless as the days passed, more willing to let go of physical objects while holding tight to the memories they represented. I contacted our family attorney to update my own will, removing William as the primary beneficiary and dividing my estate between several charities with a small provision for Eleanor. It wasn't about punishing William, I told myself, but about making conscious choices rather than defaulting to expectations. 10 days into the process, with William and Tara enjoying Rome according to their Instagram posts, the closing date was set. I would officially sell my home of 30 years and wire transfer the proceeds to my new account the day before their return. I booked a one-way ticket to California for the same day. The reality of what I was doing sometimes hit me in waves of doubt. Was I overreacting? Would this irreparably damage my relationship with my son? Should I try talking to him first? But then I would remember his words. Mom's becoming such a burden. At least the house will be ours soon. We've earned it after dealing with her. No, this wasn't an overreaction. This was long overdue self-respect. The night before the movers were scheduled, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a letter to leave behind. I went through several drafts, torn between anger and love, between explaining my hurt and defending my actions. The final version was simple and direct. William and Tara. By the time you read this, I will be in California with Eleanor. I've sold the house and transferred the proceeds to an account you don't have access to. I heard your conversation at the airport. I know you think I'm a burden. I know you expected to have earned my house by dealing with me. I know you plan to move me to assisted living against my wishes. I am 63 years old, in good health, and fully capable of making my own decisions. This is my decision. I need time away from both of you to determine what, if any, relationship we can have moving forward. Please don't try to contact me until you hear from me first. Your father would be disappointed in how you've treated me. I know I raised you better than this. Mom. I sealed the envelope and placed it on the counter where they would see it immediately upon entering. Then I walked through each room of my beloved home one last time, saying goodbye to the walls that had sheltered me, the rooms that had witnessed so much of my life. In the morning, I arranged for a neighbor to take Prince and Duchess until William and Tara returned. Mrs. Abernathy was delighted to help, having always had a soft spot for animals, and promised to tell William I had asked her to pet sit because of an unexpected emergency. The movers arrived promptly at 8, efficiently packing the items I had designated and loading them onto their truck. By noon, all traces of my personal life had been removed from the house, leaving behind the furniture and household items William and Tara had chosen. At 2 o'clock, I met with the closing attorney, signing the final papers that transferred ownership of 1487 Maple Avenue from Crawford to Miller. The proceeds, $980,000 minus closing costs, and the remaining mortgage balance were wired to my new account as requested. Just like that, it was done. The house that had been the center of my world for 30 years now belonged to strangers. I felt a momentary pang of grief quickly replaced by a surge of exhilaration. For the first time in years, possibly decades, I had made a major life decision completely on my own terms. My flight to San Francisco was scheduled for 7 that evening. I had a few hours to fill, so I checked into an airport hotel and showered, changing into comfortable clothes for the 6-hour journey ahead. As I sat in the hotel lobby, waiting for my taxi to the airport, my phone pinged with a text from William, just landed in NYC connecting flight home in 2 HRs. Can't wait for our own bed after 3 weeks of travel. Hope everything's okay with you and the pets. I didn't reply. They would discover the truth soon enough. The taxi dropped me at Terminal B of Bradley International Airport just as the sun was setting. I checked my single suitcase, moved through security with the efficiency of someone who rarely travels but is determined not to appear confused, and found my gate with time to spare. As I settled into a seat near the boarding area, my phone began to buzz with incoming texts. The time difference meant William and Tara had likely just arrived home to find my letter and an empty house with changed locks. I turned off the phone without reading the messages. Whatever William had to say could wait until I was ready to hear it. The flight to San Francisco was long but uneventful. I dozed, intermittently waking to accept drinks and decline meal options, my mind alternating between anxiety about the future and a strange, buoyant sense of freedom. Eleanor was waiting at the arrival gate, instantly recognizable despite the years since we'd last seen each other. Her hair had gone fully silver, cut in a stylish bob that framed her tanned face. She wore casual linen pants and a bright blue tunic, looking every bit the relaxed California retiree. "Velma," she called, waving enthusiastically. "Over here." We embraced awkwardly, then more warmly, as the initial strangeness dissolved into familiar sisterly affection. "You look exhausted," she said, taking my carry-on bag. "Let's get your luggage and get you home. You can tell me everything after a good night's sleep." Eleanor's condo in Pacific Grove was nothing like my Connecticut colonial. Modern, open plan with large windows overlooking the ocean, it was filled with light and decorated in shades of blue and white. The guest room she led me to was similarly bright, with a comfortable-looking queen bed and a small balcony with a view of the water. "Bathroom's through there," she said, pointing to a door. "Fresh towels in the cabinet. I'll let you get settled. There's tea or wine when you're ready to talk." I opted for wine, joining Eleanor on her balcony after a quick shower. The sound of waves crashing against the shore below us was hypnotic, so different from the suburban quiet I was accustomed to. "So," Eleanor said, handing me a glass of chilled white wine, "you sold your house out from under your ungrateful son and ran away to California. I have to say I didn't think you had it in you. I'm impressed." I laughed, surprising myself with the genuine sound. Neither did I, but once I made the decision, it felt right. "Have you checked your phone? I imagine William is having a complete meltdown right about now." I nodded, taking a sip of wine. "He's called 12 times and left about 20 texts. I'm not ready to talk to him yet." "Good for you," Eleanor said firmly. "Make him sweat a little. So, what's your plan now?" That was the question. Wasn't it? I had been so focused on the escape that I hadn't thought much beyond it. "I don't know," I admitted. "Stay here for a while if that's okay with you. Figure out what comes next." Eleanor reached over and squeezed my hand. "Stay as long as you need. We've got 20 years to catch up on, and I'm in no rush to see you go." The next morning, I woke to the unfamiliar sound of seagulls and the smell of coffee brewing. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back, and I smiled into my pillow. I had done it. I had reclaimed my life. Breakfast with Eleanor was comfortable, as if the decades of distance had never happened. We talked about her life in California, her career as a graphic designer, her divorce, and subsequent decision to remain single. "Best decision I ever made," she said, refilling our coffee cups. "I answer to no one but myself." "That sounds wonderful," I admitted. "I've been someone's wife or mother for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to just be Velma." Eleanor smiled. "You'll figure it out, and you've got time now, plus financial security to explore options." After breakfast, I finally turned my phone back on, steeling myself for William's messages. They progressed from confusion to anger to panic. "Mom, where are you? Why is all your stuff gone? What do you mean you sold the house? You can't do that without talking to me first. This isn't legal. I've called a lawyer. You're not thinking clearly. Mom, please call me. I'm worried about you. This isn't like you. The last few messages shifted to a different tone. I understand you're upset, but we need to talk about this like adults. Whatever you think you heard was taken out of context. Please, Mom, just call me back. I showed the messages to Eleanor, who snorted. Classic manipulation. First, he's angry, then he's concerned about your mental state, then he's the reasonable one while you're being emotional. Don't fall for it. I won't. I promised, though part of me ached at the distance that had grown between my son and me. I just need time to process everything. That afternoon, I received an email notification from my bank confirming the wire transfer had completed successfully. The full amount from the house sale was now securely in my new account. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The next week passed in a blur of new experiences. Eleanor showed me around her coastal community, introducing me to favorite cafe shops and walking paths. We spent hours on the beach watching waves crash against the rocky shore, so different from the Atlantic coastline I was familiar with. I met Eleanor's friends, a diverse group of retirees who welcomed me warmly into their social circle. There were book club meetings, morning yoga sessions on the beach, art classes at the local community center. Each day brought new faces, new conversations, new possibilities. William continued calling and texting, though, with decreasing frequency as the days passed. Tara sent a single message that made my blood boil. Velma, we're very concerned about your sudden behavior. William is looking into having you evaluated by a geriatric specialist when you return. Please come home so we can help you. I showed it to Marjorie during one of our daily phone calls. Her response was immediate and profane. They're trying to build a case for incompetence, she fumed. Classic elder abuse tactic. Thank goodness you got out when you did. 2 weeks after my arrival in California, I received a formal letter from a Connecticut attorney representing William. It claimed I had been unduly influenced and manipulated into selling the family home, questioned my mental competence to make such a decision, and demanded I return to Connecticut to resolve the situation. I forwarded it to Marjorie, who consulted with a colleague in California. Their joint response was reassuring. William had no legal grounds to challenge the sale or control my finances. I was clearly competent, had acted independently, and had every right to sell my own property. Still, the letter shook me. The son I had raised was now questioning my sanity because I had refused to be marginalized. It was a profound betrayal, deeper even than the original overheard conversation. I decided it was time to respond not to William's increasingly desperate messages, but to his legal threat. With Marjorie's help, I drafted a clear, firm letter to William Crawford and his legal representation. I am of sound mind and body, as multiple professionals can attest. The house at 1487 Maple Avenue was solely in my name, and I had every legal right to sell it. Your suggestion that I have been unduly influenced is both incorrect and insulting. The only undue influence I experienced was from you and Tara attempting to control my finances and future plans without my consent. I am aware that you plan to move me to assisted living against my wishes and claim my home as your own. I have documentation of these intentions. Should you pursue legal action, I am prepared to counter with claims of attempted elder abuse and financial exploitation. I suggest you reconsider this approach. I will contact you when I am ready. Until then, further communication should be directed to my attorney, Velma Crawford. I sent copies to William, his attorney, and Marjorie for her records. Then I turned off my phone again and went for a long walk along the shoreline, letting the sound of waves wash away my anger and hurt. That evening, Eleanor and I sat on her balcony, watching the sunset, a ritual we had quickly established. I've been thinking, I said, sipping my tea. I might like to stay in California, not just for a visit, but permanently. Eleanor's face lit up. Really? That would be wonderful, but are you sure? What about William and your life back east? I considered the question carefully. My life in Connecticut was built around Harold and then around William. I think it's time I build a life around what I want. And what do you want, Velma? The question was simple but profound. What did I want? After decades of prioritizing others' needs and desires, I barely knew how to answer. I want peace, I said finally. I want new experiences. I want to wake up each morning and make my own choices without explanation or apology. I want to live near the ocean and learn to paint and make friends who see me as Velma, not just someone's wife or mother. Eleanor raised her glass in a toast. To Velma, finally claiming her own life. I clinked my cup against her glass, feeling a sense of possibility, expanding within me like wings unfurling. To new beginnings. 6 months can change everything. 6 months ago, I was a widow being slowly erased from my own life, accepting my son's control as the price of not being alone. Today, I'm standing in the living room of my new beachfront condo in Pacific Grove, directing movers where to place the few treasured pieces I kept from my old life. The reading chair goes by the window, I tell them, pointing to the perfect spot overlooking the ocean, and the side table next to it. After staying with Eleanor for 3 months, I decided to put down permanent roots in California. With the proceeds from selling the Connecticut house, I was able to purchase a modest but beautiful 2-bedroom condo just 2 blocks from Eleanor's place. Close enough for daily visits, far enough for independence. The condo is nothing like my old colonial home. It's smaller, more modern, with an open floor plan and large windows that flood the space with light. I've furnished it sparsely but comfortably, mixing a few cherished antiques with new pieces that reflect my evolving taste. No more heavy drapes and dark wood. My new home features soft blues and greens, light woods, and comfortable seating arranged to maximize the spectacular ocean views. It's peaceful, serene, entirely mine. My days have developed a pleasant rhythm. Mornings begin with yoga on the beach with a group of women ranging in age from 50 to 80, all active and engaged with life. Afternoons might include watercolor classes at the local art center, volunteering at the Maritime Museum, or simply walking along the coastal trail with Eleanor. I've made friends, real friends, who know nothing about my past and accept me as I am now. Georgia, a retired professor who runs the book club. Marcus, a widower who teaches Tai Chi in the park on Saturdays. Lily and Denise sisters who own the cafe where I get my morning coffee. They know I moved here after a falling out with my son, but not the details. Those I keep private, processing the hurt in my own way at my own pace. William's attempts to challenge the house sale failed, as Marjorie predicted. Without evidence of incompetence or undue influence, his case collapsed before it really began. His attorney eventually advised him to drop the matter. 3 months after I left, William sent an email that was part apology, part justification. Mom, I understand you're still upset. Maybe we didn't handle things as well as we could have, but we were worried about you living alone in that big house. You seemed depressed after Dad died, and we thought you needed help. Maybe we took over too much, but it came from a place of concern. I wish you had talked to us instead of running away and selling the house. That was our family home. I grew up there. I always thought my kids would visit their grandmother there someday. Now it's gone and some strangers are living in it. I don't understand why you had to be so extreme. We could have worked something out. Now Tara and I have had to move back to our townhouse, which we were planning to sell. Our plans are completely derailed. Can we at least talk? I miss you despite everything. William. I read the email several times, noting what was missing, a genuine acknowledgement of how they had treated me, an admission of their plans to claim my house, a real apology for calling me a burden. The focus remained on his inconvenience, his feelings, his plans. I waited 2 weeks before responding. William, I appreciate your email. I understand this situation has been difficult for everyone. I didn't run away. I made a decision to reclaim my life after overhearing you and Tara discuss putting me in assisted living and taking my house. Yes, I heard that entire conversation at the airport when you forgot to hang up the phone. I heard you call me a burden. I heard Tara say you had earned my house by dealing with me. That was the culmination of months of being gradually pushed aside in my own home. You took over my finances, rearranged my house, made decisions without consulting me, all under the guise of helping. I'm not depressed or incompetent. I'm a fully capable adult who deserves respect and autonomy. In California, I've found both. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but it will take time and significant changes in how you view and treat me. I suggest we start with occasional phone calls and see where that leads. Mom. William's response came quickly, full of excuses and selective memory, but with a thread of genuine remorse I chose to focus on. We began talking once a month, brief, somewhat awkward conversations that carefully avoided mention of the house or my decision to leave. Tara never contacted me directly, though William occasionally mentioned her in passing. They had decided to sell the townhouse, after all, and had purchased a smaller home closer to William's office. I gathered that their financial plans had indeed been disrupted by losing access to what they had assumed would be their inheritance. I felt a twinge of guilt about that, quickly replaced by resolve. They were young, employed, capable. They would adjust, and perhaps learn something about entitlement and respect in the process. Today marks 6 months since I arrived in California, and I'm hosting a small housewarming party to celebrate my new home. Eleanor has helped me prepare food and arrange flowers. Georgia is bringing wine. Marcus has promised to teach everyone a simple Tai Chi sequence on my balcony at sunset. As I arrange a tray of cheese and fruit in my sun-drenched kitchen, I catch sight of my reflection in the window. My hair has grown out from its practical bob to soft waves that I've stopped coloring, allowing the silver to shine through. My face looks different too. More relaxed, the worry lines between my brows less pronounced. California agrees with me. Independence agrees with me. The doorbell rings, announcing my first guests. Before going to answer, I pause for a moment, taking in the space I've created. My home, on my terms. "Harold," I whisper to the empty room. "I think you'd be proud of me." Then I go to welcome my friends, opening the door to the new life I never knew I wanted until I found the courage to claim it. Looking back on this journey, I realize that sometimes it takes a devastating blow to wake us up to our own worth. When my son called me a burden, he unknowingly set me free. Free from expectations, free from obligations, free to discover who Velma Crawford really is when she's not defined by others. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life or wondered if it's too late to start over, let me tell you this. It's never too late to stand up for yourself. It's never too late to say, enough. It's never too late to begin again. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and your own happiness? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support means the world to me, and I'll be back next week with another story from my journey. Until then, remember that you are never too old to reclaim your life and find your joy.